cost of flipping the bird. A man is seriously prosecuted in Kazakhstan for giving the finger to an official motorcade. The Ministry of Free Time and Space. Key reshuffling in the government and reorganization of ministries suddenly hit Kazakhstan. The rates came unexpected. Natural monopolies surprised clients with new rates for public utilities starting in the new year. The South Pole. Southern Kazakhstan survives a severe winter storm, but finds itself in an emergency. Hello, I am Asylbek Abdulov and you are watching Vlast KZ on K+. Kanat Shalakhayev, a 22-year-old Pavlodar resident, served 5 days in the city detention center for an obscene gesture. On January 10th, the unemployed young man gave the finger to a passing motorcade of Kairat Mami, the chairman of the parliament's upper house. The crime and punishment of a man who is of the same age as independent Kazakhstan instantly went viral. The finger as an insulting gesture came from abroad, but is commonly used in the country since, except that it seemed that flipping one is usually attributed to people with roots in the promiscuous, wild and lawless 90s.
Жест в Казахстане вполне и давно прижился. Вот один из комментариев в Фейсбуке.
One observer posted on Facebook that in the post-millennium Kazakhstan and the times of political correctness with its reserved teenagers, the finger is mostly flipped by emancipated women over 30 who came of age in the 1990s. Men prefer classical bras d'honneur, emphatically gripping the bicep of an L-shaped arm. Well, you probably know how it goes. Indeed, it is always a sign of protest or rejection. The online community says that the finger in Kazakhstan is frequently exchanged by women. The discussion itself raised a lot of interest from the female audience, as is evident from numerous reposts of the gestures, macros, and comments under the topic. It looks like there are some deep subconscious issues at hand, requiring hours of gestalt therapy. That's the reaction of internet users. But one way or another, the public display of the finger in Kazakhstan will now be forever associated with politics and seriously treated as an administrative offense. The crime and the punishment of the unemployed young man says a lot about the crisis of respect and trust in the government. Ira Robbins, a law professor at American University in Washington, D.C., who has studied the gesture's place in criminal jurisprudence, said in his interview to BBC that, quote, while the middle finger may historically have symbolized the phallus, it has lost that distinctive meaning and is no longer even obscene. It does not appeal to the prurient interest, the expert says, adding that this gesture is so well ingrained in everyday life in this country and others. It means so many other things like protest or rage or excitement. It's not just a phallus.
Просто фалос.
This image with the finger and another one with it went viral all over the Kaznet after the resident of Pavlodar, Kanat Shalakhayev, received 5 days in jail for showing a middle finger. Shalakhayev demonstrated a dirty gesture to the government motorcade of Senate Chairman Kairat Mami. As a matter of fact, the young man didn't even know who was sitting in the VIP vehicle. However, the police did. They arrested Kanat for an obscene gesture. He justifies his actions as reckless while he didn't know exactly whose cortege was it. The court ruled to hold the offender administratively liable under Part 1, Article 330 of the Administrative Offences Code, sentencing him to 5 days of confinement. On January 10th, Kairat Mami arrived in Pavlodar on a working visit with an important government mission. According to the website of the Senate, Mami went over the Strategy 2050 and discussed the results of early executed Strategy 2030 during the meeting with active members of the region. Perhaps this visit may have remained on the level of Pavlodar city administration if it wasn't for the vigilance of the local police, which gave it a whole different meaning in a virtual scale. The news of the arrested Pavlodar resident quickly spread throughout the social networks, whereas the finger now has an animated nature. According to the lawyer Victoria Tuleneva, the conviction of Kanat Shalakhayev was unlawful. The finger pointed in the air cannot be classified as a crime. I don't understand the logic neither of those people who initiated the case, nor the servants of justice who have determined that this young man addressed the offensive gesture, namely to the chairman of the Senate. Let's say it was addressed to the driver or a traffic police officer, for instance. How could they possibly establish that? I believe they haven't established anything. Mom enough. Tahirjan. Yet another finger-related story. This footage was made almost 5 years ago when Almaty resident Tahirjan Akhmetov decided to cut off his own finger. This was the expression of protest by the entrepreneur against the unjust decision of the Kazakhstan court. Akhmetov lost his business in a lawsuit initiated by dishonest business partners. Akhmetov invited journalists to witness the act of self-mutilation and cut off his finger after all. We need to fight, it's about time. We can't be dying out like that in silence or become homeless by losing our rights. The bloody show back then hasn't changed the course of Akhmetov's litigation. He was even going to cut off another finger. That's when the officials finally paid attention to his case. Perhaps social networks were not as developed in 2008. However, it is worth noting that now the rowdy gesture of a middle finger raised in the air received a lot more publicity than a cut-off finger back then. Those who know a bit about rights and protest made it already clear for themselves that the more of us commit suicides makes it easier for authorities to win this warfare. We impose quite a bit of a danger to the enemy when we're intact, while the Vincent van Gogh wannabes only make the authorities laugh. Poet Yerbol Zhumagulov responded with poetry to the act of self-mutilation, saying that it seems romantic enough but not nearly as effective, whereas the act of Pavlodar resident Kanat Shalakhaev hasn't inspired the poet at all. Just as the servants of justice, Zhumagulov qualified the middle finger simply as an act of hooliganism. Well, he was sentenced to 5 days, right? Should he throw his elbow into it, he would have received 10 or even 15 days. 15-day incarceration is how much you receive for participation in rallies. In this case, it's better to assert your rights peacefully and legally, so that nobody shows inappropriate gestures to each other in our country. In fact, this is an influence of US which infected our minds through Hollywood movies. So from now on, every citizen of Kazakhstan has to keep his fingers like that. Greeting from the artist Ibragimov. The artist Kanat Ibragimov is known for his performances. He publicly chopped off the heads of a rooster and a fish. He was spotted flashing his body parts several times as well. Ibragimov is convinced that expression of personal opinions and feelings is not a crime. Therefore, he sees nothing criminal in what Kanat Shalakhaev has done. These days in Kazakhstan, it's easy to end up in jail for anything. We're all familiar with how the judges twist laws and how our law enforcement agencies maintain the law and order in Kazakhstan. All legal or political rules, along with all human rights, have already been violated. Our Kazakhstan courts, law enforcement agencies and the authorities have violated every possible article by now.
Передаем куплеты мусорам и ментам, средний палец вверх прокурорам и судам, поливным погонам, средний палец вверх грешникам в законе, средний палец вверх.
Aktau rappers throw the middle finger left and right. The song was posted on the internet a year ago. However, only now, due to the incidents with the chairman of the Senate, the harsh Aktau rap song has received a whole new sound. Apparently, the online situation seems to have escalated enough. In the meantime, following the 5-day arrest, Kanat Shalakhaev immediately disappeared from the cameras. The freedom in Kazakhstan is only a virtual concept so far.
Last
week, many hoped for a change in the fate of men convicted for taking part in Zhanaozen and Shetpe riots. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court cut Kazhimurat Avezov's 7-year term by 3 years and reduced Kabidyan Bakhadjan's and Yerzhan Mambetov's 5-year sentences to 3, immediately pardoning and releasing them in the courtroom. At the same time, no changes were made to the verdict related to Zhanaozen violence. The regional court in Aktau upheld the decision of the district court following the appeal filed on behalf of 9 convicted oilmen. So far, 17 people remain behind bars of the 49 total convictions made during Shetpe and Zhanaozen cases. That is as far as current humanization goes. For now, it has affected only 1 person convicted for the unrest in Shetpe. It is yet to be seen if there will be any changes in the fate of other prisoners, and whether justice and mercy is not a one-off occurrence, but a stable trend. The head of state once again is busy building an effective government. On Wednesday night, several news agencies reported about the new staff changes, reorganizing of several official departments, and the establishment of a new Ministry of Regional Development. Last week, Kazakhstan citizens witnessed the creation of a new regional development ministry. The talks of the new ministry started far back of last October. The main contenders to take the chair of a new minister were Berdimuhamed Saparbayev, head of the East Kazakhstan Region Administration, and Deputy Prime Minister Karimbek Kusherbayev. It was a surprise to all when Bakhtjan Sagintayev was ahead of them. It took him 4 months to cover his way from head of Pavlodar City Administration to deputy chairman of Nur Otan Party. Now he is the first deputy prime minister and the head of a new ministry in charge of local self-government issues. Heads of administration are appointed by the president and are directly accountable to the president, meaning the government is left aside. In this case, it is not clear who has control over the regions and regional heads of administration. I can understand that departments are accountable to branch ministries, but heads of administration are completely left out. Perhaps that was the reason. Why was Karimbek Kusherbayev, who quickly climbed the career ladder to the president's advisor and later to deputy prime minister, was later disranked by the president to head the regional administration, although now he will be serving the people in his home grounds, Kızılorda region. It is worth noting that the president appointed Alik Aydarbayev to take over the post of Mangistar region head of administration. Aydarbayev was an ex-general director at Kazmunaygaz, notorious for a conflict with oil workers that later led to Zhanaozian events. Political analyst Talganay Umbetalieva believes that the president has given a second chance to Karimbek Kusherbayev. He failed in one region and now he is transferred to a different one that has similar problems. There were protests in the region when people expressed their dissatisfaction with the presence of foreign companies in the region. Perhaps this is a second chance for him to show that he can deliver and do what he failed to do in Mangistau. Astana also experienced reassignments involving two secretaries, Minister Tajan, Kulmuhamed and Munbay. Darkhan Munbay, who lost his chair as Minister of Justice and Information and was appointed Director of National Museum, is clearly in the loss. Former State Secretary Mukhtar Kulmuhamed took Munbay's chair and became three-time Minister of Culture and Information. Political heavyweight Marat Tajan took the chair of State Secretary, leaving the post of National Security Secretary. Experts believe Tajan's reassignment will bring about changes in the country's domestic policy. It is clear now that the power methods are not effective in resolving the situation. A year after the events in Zhanaozian, when it was resolved by resorting to force, we witnessed the worsening of the situation and increase of protest actions. It needs to be resolved by means of ideology, and Tajan is now responsible for this, as he is considered a grey figure in terms of ideology. It is worth noting the rapid career advancement of an ex-head of sports and tourism agency, Talhat Yermigiyayev. He was appointed head of national company Astana Expo 2017, responsible for construction of sites for the international exhibition. The budget of the project is estimated at over $2 billion. In this regard, the goal of the Olympics really paid off for him. Ex-opposition member Asylbek Kazhakhmetov says that constant change of chairs among the same people means that the substitutes bench is empty. В эти перестановки не появилось ни новых лиц, ни представителей новых, допустим, парламентских партий, которые могли бы, наверное, уже претендовать. We have not seen neither new people nor new parliament parties as a result of the reassignment. The change of chairs does not affect the interest of the people, as the goals remain the same. However, the non-government sector was surely affected by the reassignment because, irrespective of the political programs, each new minister brings in new dynamic impulses. Our governance is more personal than system-oriented. Министр, каждая новая перестановка вносит свои сильные импульсы. У нас управление носит не системный, а больше личностный характер. As an exception, the president did inject new blood into top power echelons. Ex-deputy head of presidential administration, Baudran Baybek, was appointed as deputy chairman of the ruling party, despite being only 38 years of age.
Я предлагаю к назначению кандидатуру Байбека.
I propose to appoint Baudran Baybek, who is now deputy head of administration. Have a seat. He is still young. He will be 40 soon.
Молодой гражданин еще, 40 лет скоро будет.
Politician Bulat Abilov noted personnel reshuffling of Musin's associates in recent reassignments. It is obvious that the ruling political clans experienced redistribution of power. First of all, Mr. Masimov and his clan became stronger, as well as Mr. Sagintayev and his position, and Nurtan Abukayev. After the reassignment, two people definitely found themselves on the winning side, and I believe they will be winning in the future. Kazakh citizens will see new reassignments by the end of the month. It is rumored that the country's power bloc will be restructured. Akhmedjan Yusimov, head of Almaty City Administration, is predicted to become Speaker of the Senate. The key position of Security Council Secretary is still vacant. Next on Vlast KZ. The raids came unexpected. Natural monopolies surprised clients with new rates for public utilities starting in the new year. The South Pole. Southern Kazakhstan survives a severe winter storm, but finds itself in an emergency. Stay with us. Vlast KZ will return with more in a few minutes.
Главные события в Казахстане. Достоверные факты. Эксклюзивные комментарии. Читайте в Казахстане информационно-аналитический портал «Республика». Чтобы обойти блокировки, воспользуйтесь доменом respublicas.info. Вы окажетесь на так называемом прокси-портале. Специально разработанные канадскими специалистами по интернет-технологиям, прокси-порталы помогают пользователям получать информацию в тех странах, где блокируют интернет-ресурсы. В Китае, Иране, в Казахстане. Вы принимаете условия использования системы и попадаете на страницу информационно-аналитического портала «Республика». Материалы интернет-портала также доступны пользователям всемирной сети Facebook. facebook.com/respublica.kaz. Если вы хотите поделиться информацией, вам есть что рассказать, звоните в редакцию «Республики». Наши телефоны в Казахстане +7 727 273 92 95, в Москве +7 495 621 87 03.
Новости Казахстана на казахском языке смотрите в 21:00 и далее каждый нечетный час. Новости Казахстана на русском языке в 22:00 и далее каждый четный час. Новости Казахстана на английском языке смотрите в 16:30, 17:30, 18:30 и 19:30 со вторника по субботу. Время Астаны. Изготовление и размещение рекламы на канале KplusTV.
22-й год одиночества миллионов казахстанцев.
After 22 years of independence, many citizens of the country remain powerless and hopeless. Once again, they are left one-on-one with the invisible hand of natural monopolies and market economy that dictates seemingly unfair prices and rates. Meanwhile, MPs and authorities with their Agency for Regulation of Natural Monopolies show no interest in the matter. The phantom of opposition lurking in the social networks cannot give much solace either. Both are pretty far from ordinary people. The unresponsive officials and imitating life opposition show no signs of political creativity. The scope of issues remains as wide as ever, but the range of interest displayed by political players just seems way too narrow.
Симулякры власти и симулякры оппозиции.
I paid a visit to my parents who live in the Almaty suburbs this week. Their pensions went up by 9%, but the news does not excite them that much. The mother of a large family says it is not her extensive employment history, but her own children that help her survive. Even though our pensions went up, water and phone tariffs did too. Bread used to cost 45 tenge, then 50, now it's 55. It would have been even harder without the children. Among the two of them, my parents receive 64,000 tenge a month, or a little over $400, half of which is spent on water, electricity, gas, phone bills, and medicine. Rounded up, that makes 30,000 tenge. Subtract that from 64,000, you get 34,000 left. Divided by 2, it is 17,000 each. Divided by 30 days, it equals to a little over 500 tenge, which is a little over $3. Try to survive on $3 a day. I bought this for my granddaughter. I have no meat. My freezer is empty. I am an herbivore. I do not have enough money for meat. Vera Alexandrovna's fridge is stocked up on medicine. The former medical worker with a 40-year employment record received 17,000 tenge, or $112, most of which is spent on utilities. The retiree is forced to economize on electricity, water, and completely do away with hot water. Still, Vera Chentsova entered the new year in debt for public utilities in the amount of 50,000 tenge, or $332. I don't buy meat, sausage, or anything expensive for that matter. I buy bread, tea, and butter. I don't buy milk, I buy kefir. That's it. There were 2.8 million before the reforms. Kazakhstan is considered a well-off and democratic state. Now there are 1.5 million left. They all died from being well off. Chairman of Поколение Public Organization Irina Savastina speaks about the new pensions. Now the basic rate stands at $60, while the highest is $335, but this kind of money is paid only to 30% of the retirees. The minimal pension is $126, accounting for a 9% increase, which is $2.50 higher than the minimum wage. The Anti-Monopoly Committee, which is responsible for protecting consumers' rights and regulate monopolist prices, is called by Irina Savastina anti-national. The Anti-Monopoly Committee is a controlling body, but I see no control here. It must be taken to court and stand the harshest trial without the right to mitigation. The rates for every public utility grew in every region of the country, but at different rates. Electricity went up by 6%, heating by 20%, and drinking water by 98% in October. Electricity in Pavlodar will now cost 2.5% more, and heating 7%. Tariffs on all utilities in Kostanay went up by 13.7%. Heating in Uralsk is now 41% more expensive, and electricity 18.8%. Many noted a price hike for products after tariffs went up, although official data says consumer goods rose in price by 5.3% last year. Everything got more expensive before the new year. Eggs used to cost 120, but now 200. Dairy products are more expensive, but worse in quality. According to analytics, price hikes for goods and services are directly related to higher electricity tariffs. They rose by 20% in 2010 and by 10% in 2011. After most electricity stations were privatized in the early 90s and sold to foreign investors, the state lost full control over energy tariffs. There was a Zhezkazgan heating plant built in its time to meet the needs of its residents and for production, but at the moment we are not using its electricity since it is Kazakhmys Corporation's private property. It uses the electricity in production instead of the needs of the population. We get electricity from the kplus hydroelectric power station, which is several times more expensive. Private companies to whom these power plants were transferred were responsible for reconstruction, creation of new capacities, and renovation of technical equipment. The government admitted that the tariff policy in exchange for investments did not justify itself, so it is planning to do away with it after 2015. Unfortunately, the government did not invest into the renovation of infrastructure objects. Electricity prices will grow until the year 2015, says the government. It is likely Kazakhstan will celebrate 2 more new years with new tariffs. The helplessness of Kazakhstan's citizens in the face of aggressive policy of monopolies can be explained by the enormous divide between the people and the authorities with opposition. The current situation, with minor adjustments, is really a smaller model of what is happening in Russia. Maxim Sokolov, a columnist of newspaper Izvestia, cites the example of perestroika. No one at the time knew exactly what the outcome would be, while certain similarities can be drawn between the current authorities and the Soviet government. Still, the vast opposition had a real feasible agenda, which it successfully promoted and even imposed. The distorted current reality owes a lot to the opposition's strategy, no matter how weak it was, no matter what politicians of the perestroika used to set at least midterm and yet attainable goals, Sokolov says. Nowadays, politics has lost its intended context and became a type of journalism, fleeting and ephemeral in online media, where bloggers can now do anything, including constructing successful political careers. The life cycle of a newspaper is just a day, with online publications and social networks surviving even less than that. Taking this into account, account, the major sensory assault just might be the only available tactics, although it is not clear why online activists lacking essential quality like resoluteness still consider themselves politically creative, end quote.
Конец цитаты. Заключение программы – специальный репортаж из Жамбылской области.
In conclusion, we have a special report from the Jambul region, majorly affected by a severe weather storm last week. The southwest winds with the speeds of over 30 meters per second resulted in a serious emergency. People in some areas were cut from power, heat and water supply. And while there were plenty of media reports about destruction, none mentioned the victims. The storm later hit the neighboring Sazak district in the southern Kazakhstan region as well.
Ураган захватил и соседний Сузакский район Южно-Казахстанской области.
The wind blows from over here, twists like a hurricane. Siri Kamarov talks about the hurricane which hit the Jambul region over the weekend. Here is the ruined balcony and the wooden chips and broken furniture. The bulldozer operator from Zhanatas lives on the windiest side of the 5-story apartment block. On January 12th, his family really felt it. We were sitting in the other room. Then we heard the crashing noise. We came out and saw everything was broken. In 30 years of my life, I haven't seen such a wind before. In some areas, the wind speed reached 45 meters per second. Over 50,000 people were caught up in extreme conditions. A team of rescuers and special equipment was immediately sent to the region, establishing an operational headquarters. The weather cleared up only in a couple of days. These are the storm-damaged houses of Zhanatas, which was never a developed city even before the blizzard. Mukhtar Awezov High School, the biggest one in town, was severely damaged as well. There are more than 1,000 children studying in the school. However, all of them were sent home for vacation until the building is restored. The teachers and 88 broken windows. I witnessed the snowstorm. Once we paint all the windows, the school will open again. We're about to be done, so the kids will be back to school already on Monday. As for the school curricula, we're going to catch up on it during the spring break. The rescuers who arrived from out of town are currently settled in the school. Here they have organized a hot meal supply point for local residents. There was no electricity or gas during the first few days, so now the mobile kitchen is slowly being phased down. Once everything winded down, the estimates showed 153 kilos of corned beef, 320 pounds of buckwheat and more than a ton of grain consumed by residents of Zhanatas in 6 days. During the very first days, we had a situation where we had to feed about 600 people at a time. They ate everything, leaving practically no leftovers. In fact, people asked for more food to go so that they could feed those who stayed home. Fortunately, no casualties were reported in Zhanatas. The Central District Hospital mainly had people with minor injuries and bruises during the inclement weather. In fact, the medical facility itself was damaged. The telephone line hasn't been fully restored. The decent temperature inside the facility still hasn't been arranged, so the patients had to be sent to their homes. The infants are kept in the warmest room during the snowstorm. 7 babies were born in Sarasu Hospital. Some of them had to be delivered in dim emergency lights. Nevertheless, the newborns are in great condition, say the doctors. Since there was no telephone connection and no water at first, people started panicking, especially the pregnant women, as they are extra vulnerable. The babies are born despite any kind of weather conditions. In the meantime, another city of Jambul region is in a lot worse condition. The city of Karata, with a population of 27,000, was storm damaged the most. Not all the cases of material damage have even been reported yet. Nobody came asking about the damage. I'm serious. I have 3 small children. I'm insulin dependent because of the 3rd type of diabetes. See, even most of my teeth fell off, yet nobody seems to care. The car of a 55-year-old Sadiq Mustafayev, which was parked in the yard, now turned into a pile of metal. Even though it still starts, it's unlikely he would drive it in town ever again, while auto repair seems way beyond possible with a pension of $93 and a family of 7 people. This car was our source of income. My son used to drive it and make money. In addition to the private sector of Karata, the roofs of 173 apartment blocks were torn down. Several dozen wagon loads of roofing iron and glass were sent to the region. This material will be primarily used for public facilities repair. On the count of 3, carefully follow the safety. Keep holding it. The reinforced concrete pipe which collapsed at the local HPP only worsened the situation in Karatau. Currently, only 2 out of 5 boilers produce heat for the town. Another one is going to be connected before the end of the week. The rest too probably won't be fixed till the heating season is over. Over 60 professionals along with MES personnel are working on site of the incident. Director of the company which owns the boiler station seems very tired.
Сейчас это объективно занимаются.
The investigation is underway. We expect an impartial conclusion of what caused the incident, but the wind was strong.
Ветер был сильный.
Do you think the pipe would have been okay? Should there be an appropriate maintenance?
Ну, это без комментариев.
Sorry, no comments on that one. Besides the heat issue, there is an electricity problem that needs to be solved. 68 settlements were left without the power during the blizzard. Over 100 national and regional transmission lines were knocked down. 33 high-voltage transmission line poles are damaged. You can see all the knocked-down iron structures. Per preliminary estimates, the amount of damage that needs to be restored is already almost $19 million. It is certainly a very difficult situation, but the residents still going to have to wait for a few more days. We will fix everything, including the heat, power, roofs and windows very soon. Local Muslims also encouraged the people to be patient during the Friday prayers. The Imam of Karatau Mosque interpreted the disaster as the test of faith. People wearing the Nuratan vests have also given a thought to the meaning of life. Of course, the party members will always render help, however the natural disaster is out of their hands. The shepherd Bakhajan Zangirov is also grateful to heavens. His house is located almost at the slope of the ridge, with miles to the nearest village. Luckily, none of Bakhajan's family members were injured during the storm. Even his sheep stock barely held any losses. However, the household in general still received some damage. I had nearly 2,000 hay bales stocked over here. That's all what's left. 1,800 hay bales were scattered across the steppe. $3,300 are gone with the wind. The remaining photo will hardly last for another month. Regional administration has already allocated more than $1 million for the restoration of the region. Bakhajan is hoping to receive some financial aid as well. In the meantime, as the situation is winding down, even the dog is simply enjoying the sun. Bakhajan says that the dog went through a lot of stress as well. It seems only the children don't feel stressed at all. 7-year-old Yermuhamed is playing on the ruins of an old trailer and shares how he enjoyed the hurricane. He especially liked the fallen trees and emergency vacation in school, although the boy will be back to school already on Monday. The major emergency response operations in the region have been already completed. The military is slowly being withdrawn from the affected cities.
This was Vlast KZ on KpLus. Join us next Monday for more trends, highlights, and a look into major characters who shaped the week. Goodbye.